A man who isn't mentally ill voluntarily checks himself into a psychiatric hospital. As he enters the gate, an eccentric old man suddenly jumps in front of him and asks, "How many fingers are these?" Hesitantly, the man answers 4. This quirky old man is not only a billionaire, but his globally renowned fashion design company is a testament to his unyielding quest to tap into his potential, pushing himself to the brink of madness as a self-diagnosed genius. The man, a patient with depressive tendencies and suicidal thoughts, seeks to find his own worth and purpose by coming to this place. However, the doctors here are irresponsible. They don't listen patiently to the man's troubles. Disillusioned by the unhelpful medical staff and surrounded by patients even more disturbed than himself, the man falls into utter confusion. That evening, the man visits the eccentric old man's room to ask again, "How many fingers are these?" The old man, busy writing something, ignores him. Noticing a leaky paper cup on the table, the man instinctively fixes it with tape. Touched by the man's genuine gesture, the old man lifts up the man's 4 fingers and asks again, "How many?" After a moment's hesitation, the man still answers 4. The old man then tells him, "If you always focus on the surface of the problem, you'll never see the right answer. Don't just look at the surface when looking at me." Under the old man's gentle persuasion, something miraculous happens. The fingers before his eyes blur into 8. The man hesitantly states 8. Pleased that the man has finally caught on, the old man excitedly tells him, "Learn to see what others don't, what others avoid out of fear, conformity, and laziness. That's how we can view the world with ever-renewing perspectives." The old man knows that the man is not indifferent to life. On the contrary, he's observant and thoughtful. To others, he may just seem a crazy old man, but to the man who knocks on his door seeking the correct answers, he is more. Before the man can fully contemplate the meaning behind the old man's words, the old man says, "Thank you for fixing my cup. See you tomorrow." That night, the man's roommate, who suffers from a phobia of squirrels, suddenly panics. He fears that the squirrels in the room will attack his nuts, causing him to hold his urine out of fear. The man reassures him, saying, "Squirrels are the gentlest creatures, they don't attack humans." Despite his reassurances, his roommate remains terrified, shivering under the covers. Recalling the old man's advice, the man tries to solve the problem from his roommate's perspective. He first asks where the squirrels are supposed to be, then pretends his hand is a gun. No matter where his roommate points out a squirrel might be, the man quickly aims and shoots. He keeps shooting one squirrel after another, even building a fortress in the room to defend against imaginary squirrels. In this epic squirrel battle, they emerge victorious. With the man's encouragement, his roommate finally gathers the courage to run to the bathroom. This is the first time the man experiences the joy of helping others, and he finally understands the eccentric old man's words about not just focusing on the surface of problems. Clearing away the fog, he becomes determined about his future direction. He decides to become a doctor to help more people in need. He confronts the hospital's doctors directly, criticizing their indifference. "You're terrible. You never even look at your patients or listen to their needs. I am not like you." With that, he confidently leaves the psychiatric hospital. 2 years later, he successfully gets admitted into medical school and changes his name to Patch. Over the years, true to his new name, he indeed patches up countless bodies and souls. On his first day of medical school, Patch faces ridicule from his roommate about his age. "You've got more wrinkles than the professors. Are you sure you're here to be a student?" In the first lecture, Patch is struck by a challenging notion. The dean stresses to the students that humans are inherently untrustworthy, prone to lying, making mistakes, and taking shortcuts. However, patients trust doctors the most. The dean argues that patients shouldn't trust doctors, and doctors don't need patients' trust but rigorous, unemotional training to become good doctors. The audience applauds vigorously, but Patch remains still, his attention caught by the campus beauty, not absorbing a word of the dean's speech. He certainly does not agree with this philosophy. After class, Patch eagerly shares his thoughts with the campus beauty, only to be harshly rebuked. She makes it clear she's here to study medicine, not to pursue romance, stunning a bystander named Truman who thought he was the only one capable of eliciting such strong disapproval from women. Patch laughs and says to him, "Seems I've found a kindred spirit." Thus Patch makes his first friend, Truman. He shares with Truman why he wants to become a doctor, to engage with people at their most vulnerable, not just offering treatment but also advice and hope. Patch rejects the dean's dehumanizing theory. Instead, he believes doctors should immerse themselves in humanity, curing not just diseases but also healing people. To prove his point, they dress up as interns and blend into a hospital. While everyone else focuses on observing and recording patients' conditions, Patch insists on knowing the patients' names and greets them warmly, easing their nervousness and significantly relaxing them. He then sneaks into a ward full of children with leukemia. These young children, already suffering from their illnesses, find their environment quiet and oppressive, lacking the joyful smiles that should adorn their faces. Patch approaches a little girl's bed, not with words of comfort but by putting a rubber ball on his nose, transforming himself into a clown to bring a smile to her face. Patch's comical appearance causes the little girl to burst into laughter, drawing the attention of other children who can't help but get up to watch. The previously somber ward transforms into a playground for children, filled with joy and laughter. While everyone is enjoying the moment, a nurse walks in, catching Patch off guard. He quickly puts down his props and leaves the room dejectedly. Despite this, he feels his actions weren't wrong. Seeing the children's smiles convinces him that his efforts were worthwhile. Unfortunately, the dean catches Patch in the act and is displeased with his unconventional approach. In the dean's eyes, Patch's actions are a challenge to medical authority and even a personal affront. The dean warns Patch that enthusiasm alone is not enough, and bars him from entering the hospital until his 3rd year of medical school. Not only the dean, But even the campus beauty dislikes Patch's unconventional methods. In class, while other students are seriously engaged in their tasks, Patch uses a skull model to make jokes, trying to cheer up Karen, the campus beauty. Despite the ban, Patch occasionally sneaks into the hospital, each time wearing different humorous costumes and bringing props that make the children and even the nurses laugh heartily. His presence turns the hospital's heavy atmosphere into one of optimism and cheerfulness. The semester quickly comes to an end, and Karen is shocked to see the final exam grades posted on the wall. Patch, who seemed not to take his studies seriously, ranks at the top of the class, while Karen, who studied diligently, is at the bottom. This revelation causes Karen to see Patch in a new light, and she becomes curious about his study methods. That evening, Patch explains his views again using an enema bulb and sneaks into the hospital with Karen. To fulfill a dying old man's last wish, Patch uses balloons to create various animals and simulates an African safari hunt, allowing the old man to experience the thrill of hunting one last time. Witnessing the old man's satisfied smile, Karen finally understands Patch's good intentions. When a new nurse hears noise from the ward and attempts to investigate, the head nurse stops her, having tacitly permitted Patch to care for patients in his own way. This experience helps Karen fully grasp the lesson Patch taught her, that doctors may not cure every disease, but they can comfort patients' souls. On the way back to the dormitory, Patch confesses his feelings to Karen again. Although she does not accept, she doesn't reject him either. Patch continues to sneak into the hospital whenever he can, spreading joy to every patient. One day, the dean catches Patch again and questions his actions. This time, Patch decides to counter with logic. "I'm just trying to bring some laughter, Dean." After all, medical science has proven that laughter promotes the secretion of endorphins, increases blood oxygen, relaxes the vessels, and reduces blood pressure. Although Patch makes a well-reasoned argument, the dean still scolds him harshly. Feeling downcast, Patch steps outside for a chat, unable to understand why the dean forbids him from interacting with patients. Truman suggests that perhaps the dean has his reasons too. Unchanged in his determination, Patch still sneaks into the hospital. This time, he prepares to enter the notoriously difficult room 305, housing a patient in the late stages of pancreatic cancer, known for throwing bedpans at nurses in frustration. All the nurses advise Patch against entering. Patch, undeterred by the challenge, decides to meet this irascible patient. Initially, he tries to soothe the patient by singing, but the patient responds by grabbing Patch's collar aggressively. Although this first attempt fails, Patch is not discouraged. Regrouping, he re-enters the hospital, this time in a bizarre outfit that astonishes the nurses. Patch has dressed himself as an angel, holding a Bible and speaking about the philosophy of death in a godly tone. This approach finally brings unprecedented peace to the patient's heart. He no longer fears death, even laughing heartily and opening up to Patch, moving beyond his previous gloom. On Karen's birthday, Patch invites her to his dormitory and prepares a birthday surprise with countless balloons. During the celebration, Patch passionately recites a love poem to Karen. Overwhelmed by emotion, Karen kisses Patch, touched by his kindness and increasingly attracted to this humorous and romantic man. However, unforeseen events continue to unfold. During another secret visit to the hospital, the head nurse informs Patch that the patient from room 305 is dying and wishes to see him one last time. As the patient peacefully closes his eyes to Patch's singing, Patch experiences the profound impact of witnessing someone's death for the first time. As Patch leaves the room heartbroken, he encounters a mother desperately seeking help for her daughter, struggling with the hospital's complex paperwork which delays the urgent care her daughter needs. Feeling distressed, Patch heads to a bar to talk with Truman. He criticizes the hospital's rigid procedures, which prevent patients from receiving timely care. A bold idea begins to take shape in his mind. An idea that would change the lives of millions of patients but also plunge Karen into a deep abyss. In his third year, Patch takes Karen to a secluded area deep in the mountains, featuring over 4,000 acres of pristine forest, 7 streams and 2 waterfalls, all merging into a verdant sea of green. Enchanted by the scenery, Patch shares his vision with Karen to build a unique, completely free health center here, welcoming those who can't afford medical care or are homeless. Soon, with the help of the billionaire from the psychiatric hospital, Patch's hospital quickly becomes a reality. Although it's just a simple structure, it's more than enough for Patch. Here, doctors and patients interact as equals, and patients support and encourage each other, helping them to heal in a joyful environment. Soon, the charity hospital became overcrowded, everything moving in the direction Patch had envisioned. However, the arrival of a young man with a history of self-harm and numerous hospital admissions disrupts everything. All other hospitals had refused him, leaving him with nowhere else to go. Karen found the young man strange at first sight, but the ever-optimistic Patch welcomed him, believing that if they turned him away, he would truly have nowhere left to go. Yet this act of kindness led to a regrettable incident that would haunt Patch for life. During their time at the hospital, Patch and Karen worked closely together daily, rapidly deepening their relationship. One evening, they officially became a couple, and Karen opened her heart to Patch, sharing her past trauma and distrust of men. The next morning, Patch sat by his girlfriend's bedside, tenderly reading her a love letter. However, their intimate moment was interrupted by Truman, who burst in to announce that the medical supplies were running low. Patch, resourceful as ever, disguised himself with Truman and successfully requisitioned a large batch of supplies from the hospital. That night, Karen received a call from the self-harming young man asking for help. Despite her reservations about his odd nature, remembering Patch's words, she felt compelled to act. Tragically, after she entered the young man's home, she never made it out alive. The next morning, Patch was summoned to the dean's office, fearing his theft had been discovered. Instead, he received the devastating news of Karen's death. At her funeral, Patch stayed hidden behind a large tree, overwhelmed with guilt and despair, blaming his excessive optimism for his girlfriend's death. After everyone had left, Patch approached Karen's grave and finished reading the love letter he had begun earlier. Grieving deeply, he started to question his beliefs, understanding why the dean had always said human nature was not to be trusted. The next day, Patch decided to close the health center. Truman tried to persuade him not to give up, saying, "I am also saddened by Karen's death, but this center is something we've built together. How can we just abandon it? You can't equate Karen's death with the idea that helping others is wrong." But a disheartened Patch replied, "It was my advice that killed her. If I hadn't met her, she might still be alive and well." Disheartened, Patch began packing his belongings, intending to drop out of school. However, his roommate, with whom he'd always had disagreements, stopped him. It turned out that an elderly lady in room 212 had refused to eat for 3 weeks. The roommate knew all the medical knowledge but was helpless to intervene. Yet he believed that if anyone could make a difference, it was Patch. Patch's roommate tells him, "You have a gift, you connect with people and they like you. If you leave, I won't be able to learn anymore." However, these words no longer move Patch, who is disillusioned and leaves, heading to a place where he and his girlfriend once admired the beautiful scenery. Though the landscape remains the same, he is painfully aware of her absence. Overwhelmed by grief, Patch considers jumping to end it all, questioning why God allowed such injustice. At that moment, a butterfly lands on his chest. He feels it's a sign from his girlfriend, urging him not to give up hope and dreams. This encounter helps him let go of the past and find renewal. Patch returns to the hospital, where he helps the fasting elderly lady relive a childhood dream by playing in a pool filled with noodles. The joyful atmosphere infects everyone present. Despite this success, Patch receives a notice of expulsion from the dean, who can no longer tolerate his unconventional methods. The dean's letter cites that Patch makes patients and those around them uncomfortable, and dismisses him with the absurd reason of being overly joyful. Following his roommate's advice, Patch decides to sue the dean, challenging the decision in court to prove his qualifications as a doctor. In court, Patch faces accusations of practicing medicine without a license, a serious offense in the United States. However, Patch argues that his facility was not a clinic but a community where everyone was both a patient and a healer, supporting and curing each other, both physically and psychologically. When the judge questions him about the potential for patient death, Patch boldly replies, "What's wrong with death? Why fear it? Death is not our enemy. If we are to challenge illness, we should challenge the profound indifference found in its midst." He argues that a doctor's role isn't merely to avert death but to enhance the quality of patients' lives. Treating a disease can be win or lose, but treating a person is always a win, regardless of the outcome. Patch then addresses all the medical students present, urging them not to let conventional thinking numb them to life. He encourages them to maintain their humanity and not just chase academic achievements. Start practicing your conversational skills now. Talk to strangers, make friends with those who navigate between blood and bone daily, for they can teach you things you won't learn in class. Finally, Patch tells the judges, "You have the right to deny me a degree and a white coat, but you cannot control my heart." His words leave the judges reflective. At this moment, Truman and the patients from the hospital, wearing symbolic red clown noses to show optimism, burst into the courtroom to support Patch with their joyful presence. This act transcends words, and ultimately Patch wins the judges' recognition. The dean is forced to rescind the expulsion. This victory is not just for Patch, but also has a profound impact on the entire medical field. Patch graduates from medical school, having profoundly influenced the approach to patient care and medical education. Thanks for watching. Make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications so you can watch more videos like this.